Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of The Beast Must Die. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, I'm going to kind of have a little bit of a long intro because I want to break something down. If you're just watching the AMC, version of the Beast Must Die, then this doesn't apply to you. So if you want to, you can just skip to it. I'll include time codes, so you can just skip to the review itself. But, this is more so aimed at anyone that might be watching the Brickbox version of the show, which it originally aired on, and you might be coming across this review. If you're unaware, I didn't realize this, but the Brickbox and the AMC versions of this are different. Just because it's like, I was thinking like, well, maybe I can try and get a Brickbox subscription and just watch everything at once. But then it's like, since I already know it's all out, already on Brickbox. But then I was like, oh, I already started with the AMC version, and the AMC version is an edited version of that, in a sense of basically the first 11 minutes of episode 2 were actually at the end of the first episode. So the first episodes are 50 some minutes. So all that extra time is so for whatever reason, AMC's kind of divided these up. And so this is going to be 6 episodes instead of the original 5 episodes. I don't know. Maybe they figured editing it made the pacing better or something like that. I have no idea the decision, why they made that decision. They kind of did a similar thing with Gangs of London. I think those episodes were mainly attacked with the exception of the first episode, because that the original length of that episode is an hour and a half, but they divided the first episode into episodes 1 and 2. That's why the final number episodes on AMC/AMC Plus is 10 episodes, when the original British airing of the show was 9 episodes. It's a whole thing. So that's why I'm just once again, this was mainly aimed at anyone that's, for one, curious about what I was saying, but also mainly anyone that might have watched the Britbox version, be like, why aren't you talking about certain things? Yes, I'm an idiot who completely forgets to bring up certain topics and elements of an episode when I'm doing these reviews and discussions, but it's also because, in this particular case, it's also because some of the stuff that was in the original first episode of this series is technically part of the second episode. So that's just something I wanted to kind of make clear. Just kind of wanted to put that out there because but once again, like I said, I started with the AMC version, so watching the Britbox version, because I'd have to know exactly where the AMC episodes stop and start, and what's included in one episode that was in the original Britbox version and what was cut and put into the next. It's a whole thing, so that's just kind of wanted to inform you about that whole situation, because I am currently just, like I said, I'm just sticking with the AMC versions because of that. So once again, it's going to be interesting considering the whole 5 episodes originally, but now it's being 6. That's going to be a whole interesting thing. But regardless, tangents and all that aside, getting into the episode itself. There is the whole picking up, with Lena, kind of waking up from the drunken night and stuff like that, and she's kind of pissed at Francis because it's right, you got me drunk, I told you not, I had a gig, it was a really good gig, so get out. And obviously it's hard. It's a combination of maybe Francis is feeling bad, man, I'm messing up your life. But also, it's probably not, because Francis does believe that Lena was in the car with this so-called George when Marty was hit. So maybe for her, it's just I don't care. Yeah, it kind of sucks. I'm hard. It's hard for me to tell where the line is between I know what I'm doing and the fact that I'm using you and manipulating you because I think you're guilty of sin, and how much it's just kind of right, I actually feel bad for you because I am ruining your life for my own purposes. Of I'm seeking justice for my son, so whatever I got to do, I'm gonna do it. So to the point that she kind of goes back in there, she's right, I told the audition you were trying to go to, the gig, I told them that you got roofied and that everything's okay, and that you were just kind of sick, but so Lena actually kind of forgave her a little bit because it's right, you actually went above and beyond that for me. So, and I think for Lena, it's she doesn't really have many friends that she could really rely on like that, and so Francis has kind of started filling that void a little bit of right, you're kind of you actually helped me out, so I appreciate it, and you're and she even tries to apologize, it's for about kind of what position she had put Lena in, and she's if I did that, I'm so sorry, so this is my attempt at an apology, kind of sneaking into George stuff too, yeah, you were saying something about a George, and I was actually surprised about the development of all right, George is my brother-in-law. I was oh, interesting. And then they also canoodled. And it's like, right, that's why she's avoided like being around her sister, because it's like, it's like, because he's going to be there and I don't want my sister to know about it. So it's like, okay, but Francis, well, I mean, I could always go there with you. Oh, who cares how far away it is? It's like, once again, she's not like the most like, she's once again kind of stumbling her way through this. It's not like this is some grandmaster plan. She's kind of going with the flow of like the opportunities that present themselves. She's kind of jumping on it, both to her benefit and her detriment, because she doesn't know what she's walking into in this particular lion's den. Because when they roll up, you get to meet the family. You meet George. You meet Violet. You also meet George's sister, Joy, who is, ironically enough, not a joy to be around, and but George's son Philip. So it seems like George and Joy are the keep it blunt. It seemed like they're the assholes of the family, especially Joy. The moment it's like, Violet, I heard you do poetry, and she starts saying something like trying to demean her a little bit, like, it halfway rhymes, but then like Philip was like, no, she's doing kind of like a Ernest Hemingway. I think he referenced Ernest Hemingway type of like half rhythm or something like that to it. And then Violet was kind of like smiling, because I was like, right, someone kind of gets what I was going for and appreciates it, and not just like, because Joy, to be fair, throughout the entire episode, all Joy is doing is shitting on everybody. Even later on, when Francis is like, no, that thing you're going to at Philip's school, it seems like a family thing. She's like, of course, we can't leave a guest here because they might try and steal the silverware. And she's kind of, because also saying like, you should come to the school. Like, it'll show you how the other half lives. Educationally speaking. And it's like, she's such a hoity-toity, like annoying, posh bastard is kind of what it is. Hoity-toity, I guess, would be like the American way, but obviously posh would be the more British way to kind of describe her behavior. But it's like, cool. Not only does your brother suck, you suck as a human being too, because you're doing everything you can to tear down your sister-in-law. Because Lena tried to get her out of it, but be like, Francis has other plans, especially when it was like, what do you do? It's like, she's an author. It's like, yeah, I used to be a teacher. It's like, how do you afford to kind of do all that? And it's like, she didn't have to go into explanation, but she just referenced like, I had like a safety cushion that was kind of okay, and that's why I can do what I'm doing. But then once again, Joy nitpicking and stuff like that. But it's like, But to be fair, it makes getting close to Lena a little easier, because it's like, right, we have an enemy, and because of that, like, we can both like join forces in hating her, and that actually gets you closer to me to a certain extent. So it works in her benefit. What I thought was really interesting is when Nigel shows up and like Francis has to make an excuse to leave the room, because obviously we tying into that kid Rory from last episode, from episode 1. Basically, his older brother Nicky had basically broken the glass to a pub, and obviously Nigel takes home dude with him. I'm blanking on him, but the other detective who's kind of like, he's kind of not fully laissez-faire, but he handles things in a very laissez-faire type of manner. And obviously Nigel is giving him a whole bunch of shit for it, because it's like, you're not doing the real detective work. To be fair, that's him projecting, because for him it's like, I'm sure there was some falters and some, like, he failed, I think, with the Francis stuff, as well as maybe stuff connected to Shannon, that he kind of failed in that regard. And it's just like, right, people not doing the proper work of, like, if you just sit by and just check the boxes, that's all it is. You need to kind of get out there and do some real police work. You got to get, put boots to the ground type of, that's not the necessary thing. To a certain extent, yes, but it's just like, that dude's way of handling things doesn't coincide well with the way Nigel handles things. So and for him, it's just kind of like, you're the new dude here. You come in here telling us how to run things. Even at one point when Nigel was kind of berating him a little bit later on, he just kind of like, fuck you, and he's giving Nigel the middle fingers when Nigel left the room. It's like, yeah, because he seems like a very jolly dude, and it's just like Nigel rubs him the wrong way, because, I mean, to be fair, Nigel isn't in the best. I mean, who knows, before the whole Shannon thing, was he always like this, or is it just because of the Shannon thing? On top of that, like, he's going through, and he's in therapy right now to figure himself out, so I'm sure the Marty stuff on top of it doesn't like help, but basically he ended up going to George's place to talk to him, because he needed, like, because Nicky was like, I have an alibi, but when like Nigel had gone to his place. It's like, oh, your boots. There's literally glass underneath your boots. He's like, oh, blah, 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 trying to make excuses. And then he sees the gun that's there, and it makes him kind of a panic attack. So I was like, either it's just being around firearms in general, or specifically, well, no, because like from what we found out about Shannon's situation, she was shot in the neck. So I was assuming he was responding to like the big guns. I think maybe just being around guns in general, because I think I could be mistaken. Guns aren't a big thing in the UK. I don't know if that's a Europe thing in total, but I do believe that to be like a very UK specific thing. Very much like I know Japan's like that too, where it's like a very like cops don't have guns type of thing. I believe that's the case. So like it is probably like a little uncommon to come across. Like I think it's like a rare circumstances where guns come into play. Like I said, I might be thinking of Japan. It might not be the UK that is like the no guns thing. I definitely know it's Japan that's like. I don't know if the UK is like that. Maybe, like I said, I could be confusing the two. But maybe that's why it just kind of. But it triggered like the panic attack and made him think about like like I said, maybe it's that specific model of gun. But considering she was shot in the neck, I wouldn't assume. But it could just be any firearms in general kind of like trigger and make him uneasy. But, because later on he's with her sister and she's trying to like, basically it's like, right, like a solicitor was saying like, yeah, maybe we can get like basically like a lawsuit type of thing going on for negligence for what happened to my sister. Because for her, it's like, you, Nigel, can give me the answers no one else can. Like, what did she drink? How many cups of coffee did she have? What was the last thing that she said? You know, could things have been different? Like, we still don't know the full circumstances of what happened, but I guess like they were going into some place and the thing is it negligence on like the department's part, or is it more so on Nigel's part? And maybe that's why he's just kind of like, I don't want to be a part of that because it's on me. Like maybe he did something wrong and Shannon like maybe in response to him ended up getting like shot and dying, but he was there holding her like begging for help when it was all said and done. Once again, hopefully it's nothing nefarious on his part. It is maybe it's just kind of like, but I think it might be just he did something wrong, or I don't know, or maybe it's just kind of like the luck of draw, like where it's like it could have been him, but it was her. Like I said, maybe he like freaked and was like nervous about going in. Shannon went in first and died, and maybe that's what bothers him the most. Like it could have been me, and it should have been me. Like she's dead, her family's missing her. We don't know it. Well, I'm about to say like we met his niece and his sister last episode. We don't know the full extent of his family's circumstances, so maybe it's guilt of being alive instead of her, you know. But let's keep going down the Nigel train a little bit, because looking into this whole Nicky thing, like it made him decide to he's actually going to look more into the Marty case. And the more he looks into it, the more he realizes that Garrity didn't do his job. In fact, he half-assed it because it's like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff, like a lot of follow-ups. He didn't call back people for follow-ups about certain things. The footage is missing. The main copy as well as the like backup copy are both gone. And he confronts Home Dude about it, which led to the whole like fuck you thing, because it was like, wait, you didn't get him to sign off on it? He was like, no, it's the boss, so why should I? It's like, you know, for one, it's protocol, and now there's missing evidence. It's like there's something more going on here. It is interesting that the whole Nicky thing would, because Nicky works as a gardener at George's place, so there is a tie like that. Like it was kind of a loose introduction, because obviously Nigel doesn't know that this has anything to do with George, which, to be fair, neither does Frances per se. She's kind of got it cemented in her mind that's the case, but I think what we're going to end up finding out is this whole thing is probably going to be a mishap. Like she's kind of invested herself in this family, and it might not be what she thinks it is. Or maybe it is, and she just, I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Like I'm jumping to a lot of conclusions, but I think Frances is as well. But we'll see. But circling back to the Nigel thing, so it's showing that like, and that's what frustrates Nigel the most. It's like the fact is, here's a mother grieving her child, and Garrity didn't do he half-assed the job. And so even like, you know, Nigel's therapist is wondering like, you're so diverting yourself back to this Marty case? Is it because this way you don't have to focus on like the whole like Shannon thing and do the whole thing that you're dealing with about Shannon's death. But for like what bothers Nigel is like sometimes we're able to get there, like as cops, they're able to get there before anything bad happens. But other times when something bad has happened, we're there to kind of give some form of closure to the family, to make them, to give them the answers to who, what, and why, and at the very least be able to help them move forward in some shape or form. Take those steps forward. And then like his therapist is like, is that what you're afraid of, that I won't be able to do that for you when it comes to Shannon's story, and to Shannon's, what happened with Shannon, that you won't be able to I won't be able to help you find a way forward, or that you won't be able to do that for her family, So maybe that's why, because for him it's like, you want to work on this Marty case because you get to focus on all the missteps that Garrity made. That way you don't, because it gives you a little bit more control over something rather than the loss of control you have on like this Shannon and other aspect of your life. This part of things you can at least like, oh, he messed up here, and you have a little bit more control because of like this is his feelings, and not really focusing your quote unquote feelings when it comes to the whole potentially with the whole Shannon thing. So I thought that was kind of an interesting aspect of things. But circling back to the Frances thing. Obviously, she goes to the school with the family and everything. George kind of sneaking off to talk to Lena for a little bit. She's kind of like smiling and just kind of like, yeah, super awkward being around each other. But when it was all said and done, though, the whole thing with Philip was interesting. Because, like, at first, like, it's like, oh, yeah, like, Philip, like, hung this kid up in, like, the changing room on a hook. And, Lena was almost probably about to say, like, what she say, like, was it because of reprisal? Which, George was like, what? No, like, basically saying, oh, Philip's too big to ever be one of those hooks. But she was kind of trying to say, like, no, maybe that was his way to get payback. Which it does seem like that's the case, because Philip later on says, like, he did it because he thought it'd be funny because he's small and I'm big. So maybe being big, he was always kind of picked on. And so it is that thing of like, if you're bullied, you want to bully someone else just to try to make yourself feel better, because other people stop bullying you if they realize like, oh, I mean, sometimes, not always, but it's the cycle of bullying. So I don't know. Or maybe he felt like people took more notice of the moment. It's like, oh, people are laughing and think I'm like people paying more attention to me now. Like it could be kind of an attention-seeking avenue that he's trying to go down. But obviously his dad was like, okay, we're going to settle this way. And so basically it was a tennis match. And the other kid beat Philip, even to the point the final shot was a shot to the gonads. And his dad like being like, okay, remember this. Basically, rather his dad consoling him like it's okay, because his dad the entire time was almost like, yeah, come on Philip, do a little better. It's like like almost being like disappointed in him, but rather than being there for him as father, like consoling him, it's like, it's okay, son. I mean, why'd you suggest such a like, I think it's supposed to be a very posh and rich high society way of settling beef, essentially, which is interesting. Because it's like, oh, we don't do such barbaric things as what you did. We handle it with class and demeanor. Not demeanor. I was about to say demure. Would that be the word I'm looking for? But I'm like, no. You get what I'm trying to say, though. Like, you handle it a certain way, like I said, with class. But interesting enough, Frances is the one that kind of consoles him a little bit. Gets him ice cream and everything. Which, it's that complicated thing of it feels like it's actually kind of sweet, because it's like, oh, you're looking after this kid. Is it because of your motherly instincts and you're like, oh, you realize, or is it just because you know that you can take advantage of it? Because like, right, George being a right bastard to his son, right, that gives me an opening just like the Lena stuff does. So she's trying to jump at every opportunity. So it's because at the end of the day, it's like the good place thing of no matter what you're doing, like even if you're doing something good, if it's for the wrong reasons, it doesn't count. It like there's no altruism behind it if she's doing it for selfish reasons. I mean, selfish/selfless, because it's selfish in the regard of like she's trying to like get justice for her son, but it's also selfless because she's trying to get justice for her son. So it's all of that. It's just, like I said, a fascinating aspect of like, it's a means to an end, but she's still kind of doing some good along the way. So actually like getting, open, talking to Philip and, And obviously he lets it slip about like, right, my dad's car and everything. Like the reason why I got sick, it's like, yeah, the new car. It's like, wait, new car? Because Francis was looking, trying to see if there was any damage or if the car had been recently repaired. But it's a newer car. It's like, yeah, my dad got rid of the other one like around Easter or something like that. And it's like, okay. And so obviously for her, it's like that's what she could focus on. So she sees like some nearby like barns or whatever where they could be like, or garages of sorts where the car could be, which is where she goes investigating later. So obviously Violet wants Lena to stay, which Francis is like, I can stay if you want. And then Lena's like, no, we don't have to. She's like, no, you kind of take however much time you want to. I know you want to be here with Violet and everything. And then trying to make Lena feel better by being like, yeah, my story's coming along. Like, the fact is, like, I'm very rubbish at, like, the character building, but, you know, I'm just going to straight up make the character that you're a lot more amazing than you give yourself credit for. So it's like, she's trying to help while also being so, like, it's such a double-edged sword situation. I find that fascinating. Like, it does seem like she's inadvertently, yet maybe purposely helping because it's going to help her in the long run, but she's also making them feel better, but she also gets what she wants in the end. Because I guess, like, based on knowing everything between her and George now, I guess in her mind is like, right, you might not have been in a car like I thought you were. Which George does kind of corner her a bit and be like, oh yeah, you basically left me to clean up the mess. Shame on you. We both made an adult decision. And yeah, like 3 months, I didn't know what you were thinking or whatnot. So we'll see where things kind of go from there. You have her investigating the car, but the car isn't what she thought it was. It turns out it was George's dad's car. It was kind of like a project of his. So it's not the car she was looking for. That's why I'm like, is George actually the guy she thinks he is? Or is this going to be like a large misunderstanding on her part because she isn't properly investigating? She doesn't have all the pieces to the puzzle. She's got some of them, and maybe she's kind of jamming them to fit the narrative that she believes led to Marty's death. Because maybe, just maybe, Nigel will get the full pieces to everything, and she won't. We'll see. But, like, she goes, you know, she tries to, like, spin things when George finds her. It's like, okay, how are you going to get your way out of this? And she's like, right, if someone had asked me, I would have been like, yeah, it's because but the truth be told is, like, the real reason why I broke in here is because I like to, you know, I like the thrill of it all. So he's driving in the car and everything, and it's like, she's like, oh, you want a real thrill? How about if I drive? He tells her to go this alternate route, and that alternate route just happens to be where Marty ended up getting hit. Obviously, he doesn't know the connection there, but she starts panicking, which is obviously we've seen as Nigel had this episode. So once again, the parallels of like Nigel kind of had his moment last episode, so did she, so it happened again. Not to the same extent, but it was even that moment later on when Nigel was kind of trying to drown out the noise as he's thinking about what happened to Shannon, and you kind of intercut a little bit of Francis dancing too, so it's like both of them trying to like clear their minds of, you know, there's just such a neat overlap and parallel to what they're both experiencing and kind of going through. Very different stories that kind of have a similar result to an extent. But Francis has to make it seem like, oh my god, I'm panicking and frizzle because like, oh my god, that car, like, oh, well, you know, like, oh, I'm not even insured and stuff. Like, she's like her, like it just being near was a constant reminder, and just like especially that day, you know, her hands covered in blood, her child in that condition. It's like she was taken back to that day, because I don't know if she probably hasn't been back there since the accident. I don't know, but it all came rushing back, and she has to pretend like everything's okay, and you can see her almost like barely keeping herself together, sadly, and it's like the most heartbreaking thing to see. But she has to keep up the front, like, oh, everything's okay. Like, I'm so sorry. I don't know why I'm kind of, I'm getting so excited because of this car thing. But it, like she has to keep up this front, which like that takes a lot to do. Like, especially when you're dealing with something so painful and traumatic like what happened, you know. So that's currently where things stand. Obviously, she's going to be spending more time with his family, trying to figure out, you know, gather what she needs to gather about whether George is really the guy she's believing he is, but we'll have to wait and see. Like I said, I'm leaning more towards, I don't think it's going to be I don't think none of this is what Francis believes it to be. It might even be that George isn't even the one, that maybe it was someone else. Maybe Philip was actually driving or something like that, or maybe it's Joy. I don't know. Also, one of the maids caught her sneaking around earlier in the episode, so I'm like, that's probably going to come up. Maybe not. She was able to be like, oh, I was looking for everybody else. Like, you never know. Like, in that type of situation, you always got to be careful. Like, the butlers and the maids, they notice everything, so you always have to be careful about that, especially when you start doing more suspicious stuff later on. They're just going to start, they'll probably be the first ones to potentially connect the dots. So, once again, she's not a professional. She's kind of like stumbling her way through this, so it's not like she's got all her bases necessarily covered. It's not like she came with a full-blown cover story. And she has a loose one that is loose enough, and it's not like they're like detectives, so, but I think if she slips up too much, they will kind of see through everything. But, you know, we'll ultimately have to wait and see how everything plays out going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.